Back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic. It is EDH Commander Thursday, and in today's video we are going to roll out with our third installment of our current deck building series as we continue to build an artifact token deck around Garth One-Eye. What's up, MTG BC? That is the MTG Burgeoning community. You have returned for installment number 3 of our Artifact Tokens Matter deck built around 5-color Garth One-Eye. This is our general, this is our leader, this is our commander. And of course, your channel is MTG Burgeoning for all things Magic. If you missed any of the previous installments in this current deck building series, I urge you to click on the links in the description below and it'll bring you right up to speed. Our first episode was including a dozen spells that create artifact tokens. These were the first 12 added. Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer, Dockside Extortionist, Monologue Tax, Toggo, Goblin Weaponsmith, Tireless Tracker, Tireless Provisioner, Fey Offering, Search the Premises, Sahili the Gifted, Tezzeret Artifice Master, Brass's Bounty, and Old Gnawbone. So these first 12 spells are all going to create some of our artifact tokens. What are we going to do with these artifact tokens? Well, the 12 spells added after the initial episode of this series are as follows. Lonus, Cryptozoologist, Academy Manufactor, Inspiring Statuary, Krark Clan Ironworks, Anointed Procession, Storm the Vault, Galazeth Prismari, Second Harvest, Urza, Lord High Artificer, Goldspan Dragon, Shimmer Dragon, and lastly, Whir of Invention. So our first 12 was all about making them tokens, our second 12 was all about using them tokens, and our next 12 is all about winning with those tokens. So the next 12, these are going to be considered the win conditions in this deck, aside from Garth himself, which, based upon the scope of what this deck is going to become, offers some win conditions on his own. Of course, there's the Shivan Dragon, of course there is the Brain Geyser, and of course there is the Black Lotus. He also comes with some removal, which is going to be great in this deck. So, let's start rolling out the next 12 cards that we're going to include in this deck. These are our win conditions. This is how we're going to win with our artifact tokens. Card number 1 is Rise and Shine. It's a sorcery for 1 and a blue, but don't let that mislead you in any way. We are going to overload this spell all day long. If we only cast it for its 1 in blue, then target non-creature artifact we control becomes a 0/0 artifact creature, and we put 4 +1/+1 counters on each artifact that became a creature this way. However, a la the oh-so-infamous Cyclonic Rift, if we were to overload Rise and Shine, then each non-token artifact we control becomes a 0/0 artifact creature, and each one is going to get 4 +1/+1 counters. If we have an absolute bevy, a cachet of different artifact tokens, if they're Thopters, if they're rocks, if they're treasures, if they're clue, if they're food, if they're servos, whatever they are, casting this for its overload ability turns each one of them into a 4/4 minimally. Rise and Shine is win condition number 1 in this Garth One-Eye deck. Win condition number 2 is Jirapur Ether Grid. It is an enchantment from Magic Origins with a mana value of 2 and a red. Simply tap 2 untapped artifacts we control. This deals 1 damage to any target. We're going to have a ton of these artifact tokens all over our battlefield, and tapping 2 of them with Jirapur Ether Grid in play will allow us to deal 1 point of damage to any target. Remove planeswalkers, remove creatures, remove players. This is win condition number 2. Next up is another enchantment, but this one is of the aura variety. Here we have Mechanized Production. 2 and 2 blue, enchant artifact we control. At the beginning of our upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then, if we control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, we win the game. So all we have to do is target our artifact tokens that we have so many of, slap Mechanized Production onto one of them, hope that we can make it around to our next turn and that we have at least 8, and then we win the game. Mechanized Production, number 3 of 12 win conditions included in this deck. Next up, staying with the enchantment theme, but going back to the global or world enchantments, we have Revel in Riches. This is 4 and a black, and whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, we create a treasure token. At the beginning of our upkeep, if we control 10 or more treasures, we win the game. So similar to Mechanized Production, we are utilizing the number of a particular type of artifact tokens in order to win the game. Mechanized Production doesn't care what it is, as long as you can slap one on and have at least 8. Revel in Riches is a little more specific and limiting, and that can only be treasures. However, with that nice little clause of we being able to create a treasure token whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that's going to help the treasure cause greatly. Also, please note that it says whenever a creature, it does not say non-token creature, so tokens could die too, and we don't even have to kill them. They can be killed in combat through our opponents, they can be sacrificed by that opponent in an aristocrat-style deck. As long as creatures that our opponents control are hitting the graveyard, we're creating treasures, and we're getting closer and closer to winning the game with Revel in Riches in play. That is win condition number 4. Speaking of having a certain number of artifacts under our control and letting us win the game, let's shift gears away from enchantments and let's talk about some creatures. The next one, win condition number 5, we have Hellkite Tyrant, 4 and 2 red for a 6/5 flying, trampling dude, and whenever this deals combat damage to a player, gain control of all artifacts that player controls. That is helpful. People love their mana crypts, they love their soul rings, they love their sensei divining tops, and so on and so forth, their artifact lands, their artifact specific builds. That's all well and good, but when Hellkite Tyrant hits the battlefield, guess what? We're borrowing a subset of your deck. As a bonus for us, at the beginning of our upkeep, if we control 20 or more artifacts, we win the game. And believe me, reaching the 20 artifact goal will not be difficult with this deck. Hellkite Tyrant is win condition number 5. As we reach our halfway point of our win conditions for this Garth One-Eye EDH deck, we are going to look upon Marionette Master. It is a human artificer 1/3 that has a mana value of 4 and 2 black. It has the Fabricate ability, which means when this creature ETBs, we get to put +1/+1 counters on it or create a number of servo artifact creature tokens indicated by its Fabricate number. This creature being Fabricate 3, the Marionette Master will either enter as a 4/6 or it will enter as a 1/3 with 3 servo creatures. They're artifact creatures, of course. Pretty good, not too bad. The mana value of 4 and 2 black is a little inflated for that ability. Thankfully, we have an ability at the bottom that will serve our game-ending point in a much more serviceable fashion. Whenever an artifact we control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. So with that little win condition stapled onto this card, we most likely want to have the Marionette Master come down and put the 3+1/+1 counters on her so she can enter as a 4/6. Then, whenever we sack a treasure, one of our opponents is going to lose 4 life. And then we sack another treasure, and there's another 4 life. Or we're sacking, I don't know, a clue. Or maybe we're hurling a rock at someone. Either way, with Marionette Master in play with a power of at least 4, it's only going to be a matter of time until our opponents are whittled down to no life at all. Marionette Master hits the halfway point of our 12 win condition spells for this deck. Next up, number 7, and a card that is just an amazing card. I don't understand why we don't have this, we don't have more of, I don't want to say this, that we don't have a greater popularity for this card. It wasn't actually in the set. It was the buy a box promo. Perhaps that's why. But here he is in all of his artificy glory. We have Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge, another Planeswalker, another Tezzeret. 4 blue and a black, and ETBs with 5 loyalty counters. Creatures and Planeswalker spells we cast have affinity for artifacts. That is going to be tremendous because, let's face it, this is an artifact deck. We're just not including a lot of artifact spells. We're going to create our artifact tokens as evidenced by our previous 2 installments of this series. So why is Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge, included? If it were only for his affinity ability, he would still make the list. However, as we continue to read down, he becomes more and more powerful with each passing line of text. To add, let me reframe that, to add 2 loyalty counters to Tezzeret, he deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of artifacts we control, and we gain X life. Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge, with that ability and his static ability alone, is an absolute powerhouse in this deck. He is going to be the ultimate win condition, particularly because if we can cast him and get him onto the battlefield, maintaining priority, we can still activate his +2 ability without fear of it getting picked off before doing so. Wonderful, wonderful Tezzeret, making this deck so much stronger. As we read down, we can -3 to return target artifact card from our graveyard to our hand. As stated, we don't have a ton of artifact spells in this deck, but we do have a couple of choice artifacts that will be important for us as we, get to the mid to late game. And then finally, -8, exile the top 10 cards of our library, put all artifact cards from among them onto the battlefield. I don't sense that ability will be very beneficial in this deck. Again, through the Department of Redundancy department, we are not including a ton of artifact cards in this deck. Let's be honest, Tezzeret's best 2 qualities are his static ability and the +2. Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge, you are win condition number 7. All right, next up we have win condition number 8 as we hit the 2/3 of the way mark of this video. We're going to have another dragon, and that's going to be the Hellkite Igniter. 5 and 2 red for a 5/5 flyer with haste. And for every 1 in red we tap, Hellkite Igniter gets +X+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts we control. Notice that we don't have to tap Hellkite Igniter to do that, and also notice it doesn't say activate as a sorcery. It doesn't say you can only do this once per turn. We can inflate Hellkite Igniter's ability, or we can inflate Hellkite Igniter's power to the point where we could one-shot an opponent because of the number of artifacts that we can have on the battlefield, and this is only going to cost 1 in a red to activate each time. So for the purposes of, clarity, let's say we have 10 artifact tokens in play. Okay, let's tap 1 and 1 red, and let's give Hellkite Igniter +10. Well, let's do it again. Now it's +20. Do it again, it's +30. Suddenly we're sending a 35/5 with flying into play, eliminating 1 opponent. Hellkite Igniter is win condition number 8 in this deck. Next up, we have another creature, not as splashy as Hellkite Igniter, and not as predominantly powerful either. This is more the long game. This is the chip away, and that's going to be the Reckless Fireweaver. It's a 1/3 human artificer for 1 in a red, and whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under our control, this deals 1 damage to each opponent. And trust me, we're going to have so many artifacts coming into play that if we can get Reckless Fireweaver onto the battlefield early enough, this human artificer by itself could do a considerable amount of damage. And I love the fact that it's each opponent and not target opponent. That lets us dance around Shroud, lets us dance around Hexproof, plus it allows us to bring down all of our opponents at the same time. Reckless Fireweaver, you are win condition number 9. All right, now, if we reflected back to episode number 2 of this current deck building series, we were talking about the ability to create some awfully big mana through some of the engines that we talked about with respect to Krark Clan Ironworks and some of the other spells like Urza, Lord High Artificer, and Galazeth Prismari. Well, here are some of the payouts for those big mana spells. Number 1, and one of my personal favorites, Aurelius Fury. It is an instant for X, red and a white, and it simply reads, Aurelius Fury deals X damage divided as we choose among any number of target creatures and or players. Tap each creature dealt damage this way. Players dealt damage this way can't cast non-creature spells this turn. So much versatility in this spell. Let's think of it from this standpoint. We can end of turn cast this and do minimally 1 point of damage to each creature our opponents control, have them have them all become tapped, and then we can send our forces out into combat, or each subsequent opponent thereafter that untaps is looking at each of their opponents, not us of course, with tapped creatures that could result in them being eliminated by one of our opponents. Or we can cast this during our turn, pre-combat main phase, and light it up so that our opponents cannot cast non-creature spells during our turn, and then we can do whatever we need to do to, rev up our game-winning artifact token engine. Aurelius Fury, although not very popular, I love it. I don't know why more players don't play with it. Its versatility is going to be amazing in this deck. It's going to let us accomplish a lot of different things in a lot of different ways. It is win condition number 10. And at the bare minimum, it's a burn spell that we can split up amongst any of our opponents. Aurelius Fury, very, very good. A little less versatile, but a lot more powerful with respect to eliminating opponents straight out of the gate. Well, that's going to come in the form of Comet Storm. X and 2 red with multi-kicker. For anyone that doesn't remember or is unfamiliar with what multi-kicker is, we may pay an additional 1 colorless mana any number of times when we cast this spell. Look at that a little closer. 1 stinking mana to copy this spell. 1 mana to copy Comet Storm. And what does Comet Storm do? Well, choose target creature or player, then choose another target creature or player for each time Comet Storm was kicked. Comet Storm deals X damage to each of them. This is the ultimate finisher. Comet Storm can just come out of nowhere, and with a ton of mana to copy a spell. To copy this, it's 1 colorless mana. Comet Storm, amazing. A win condition number 11. Just awesome. All right, and the last win condition of this video. This is number 12. So this is 36 cards deep into our Garth One-Eye deck. And the final win condition, another big mana payoff, is going to be Debt to the Deathless. X, double white and double black. Each opponent loses 2 times X. We gain life equal to the life lost this way. I love this spell. Once you get X to at least 6, this is a better spell than Exsanguinate. The math works out in our favor, and I also love the fact that as each opponent loses the life as opposed to damage being dealt. There are many ways in which to prevent damage. There are far fewer ways to prevent the loss of life. Debt to the Deathless will dance around Shroud. It'll dance around Hexproof because it does not target any one opponent. It says each opponent. This card is the last of the win conditions we're adding to this deck, and it is a doozy and one of MTG Burgeoning's personal favorites. And there you have it, MTG BC, 12 win conditions added to our Garth One-Eye deck. What do you think so far? Let me know in the comment section below as we move closer and closer to completing this 5-color build. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.